The time is just gone 19 minutes past 9 a.m. as we continue with News and Views this morning. And we are now focusing on the Greytown High School issue, suspending a student with a beard. We're going across now to be joined by Samnet's Mohammed Kharwa. Mohammed, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh and welcome.
Wa alaikum salam and Jazakallah for having me on your show.
Yes, once again, this beard issue, and this is an issue that has been coming up over and over again in terms of religious symbols, and also we know the issues of hijab. Those are the issues that keep on cropping up from time to time, particularly when it comes to schools, when it comes to code of conducts and things like dress codes in a particular. Now, Semnet has issued a statement, and essentially what you are saying that people should not resort to the courts for their religious practices to be respected, Mohammed.
The view from Samnet is that we shouldn't have to resort to courts. I mean, there might be a certain circumstance in which we do need to. There might be circumstances where you're dealing with people who don't want to respond, except through a legal process. But ideally, we shouldn't be dealing with that. We shouldn't have to resort to a legal process. In Samnet's experience, the best way to respond to the most of these instances is to actually start off with some, kind of heart-to-heart conversations, address some of the underlying issues that we've got to deal with in society, and then address specifically the instances that we're dealing with. And most often when we have these instances, we can resolve them amicably as soon as people kind of get past their initial kind of prejudices, etc., about the issue and start seeing beyond what is at face value just a process and a policy issue. I think the first thing we need to recognize is that South Africa, when we changed and we integrated our schools some 30 years ago, didn't actually address some of the underlying structural issues in some of the schools. So schools like Greytown High, which are, I believe, 138 years old, looked at what they did for the last 38 years, looked at the policies, the practices, the norms, the traditions of those periods, and didn't actually start thinking about how does that actually impact and what is in fact a bias, what is in fact a structural and a policy barrier, and start addressing them at that point in time. And subsequently, what we've seen is that those norms that they have put in and claimed at their school were in fact divisive, were exclusive, and don't include students who come from different cultural, religious, and ethnic backgrounds. So whether it is the issue around hair policy that we've seen in Pretoria in the last few years, an issue of students who've undergone initiation and who need to have wristbands bands on their wrists that they are wearing, and then thereafter must the scarf and the hijab issues, or you're talking about issues around the beard. They haven't actually dealt with it. Now, the beard, from an Islamic and a cultural perspective, has very, very important significance for us. It is a religious, requirement. Yes, there are people who have different positions on that, but ultimately, we want our young students to reflect what their values are, what is important to them, to be able to stand up and to be able to say, I am an equal in my school. I am actually have the right to be able to express my faith, my religion, and my culture without infringing on others, without going out and having to kind of break rules. But if the rules themselves were not incorporating what is a critical part of a person's belief system, then those rules need to be addressed. And there needs to be a process in place to accommodate that. Now, there are other schools across the country that have addressed this very, very easily. They've put in processes. They have to understand, when we as parents have to understand that there has to be rules, there has to be policies for consistency. So yes, there are policies in place, whether it is for uniform, whether it is for the keeping of beards, whether it is for cultural practices. What we need to recognize is that those policies need to actually be in place so that there is consistency, but they need to actually address the differences and the diversity that we're seeing in our classroom. And for that, I mean, one of the simple and uncomplicated examples is for Greytown High School to talk to other schools that have addressed it. We've had discussions and people have mentioned, Hashim Amla grew his beard when he was at Durban Boys High School. And he was obviously one of the exceptional students from a sporting perspective. He was a good student, I believe, from an academic perspective. And we've got the same here in Greater. It's a student who the school would be proud to actually put forward to represent the diversity, to represent what they are achieving, because the student has come across from media reports as being one who is exceptional in terms of sports. I believe that the comment that was made was that he was prevented from receiving an award because of his beard. Recently, Westville Boys High have created a policy in place where a student may, with the consent of their parent, with the participation and authority of somebody who's an expert, request a deviation from its uniform. And this may even include somebody who may have a skin condition and needs to actually have, not be able to shave because it may be medically advised against it. Or it may be for any other reason that they need to deviate from uniform. So there is a very, very uncomplicated solution to the problem. There are precedents set. Precedents include directions from the government, from the Department of Education, and policy which says that our students need to be accommodated. Precedents set, whether it is with regards to the hair, policies of schools, the hairstyle policies, which haven't accommodated, different types of hair, or whether it is hijab. So this shouldn't need to go to legislation. This shouldn't need to actually become a fight. This should be a conversation that we're having. It should be about transformation. And when we as Muslims take up this issue, as much as it is something that is very, very close to our heart, very passionate about it, we need to recognize and we need to actually look at this within the context of a bigger picture of transformation in our schools. And that would support our arguments that this is not a policy that is working for the student body, and especially in schools which are now using and creating barriers that don't need to be there.
Yes, but also I think when we're talking about creating barriers and using barriers, and when an organization or a school like Greytown High School is sticking hard and fast on its position that this is the code of conduct and this is in breach of our code of conduct, and when you have even the Department of Education saying exactly the same thing, that the code of conduct of the school needs to be respected, and this is where the issue of courts actually come in, because on the one hand we've got legislation, we've got a constitution that protects religious rights, and how does the code of conduct stand up to the constitution? So it's said that this matter goes to court now, and using the constitution obviously to justify the growing of the beard for the learned school.
The reality is that this has been addressed at the highest level. There's communication that has come even from the then Minister of Education, Enver Surti. When he was minister, when he sought guidance on this, and the department at that point in time put out a message and stated that it is a constitutional right. There is a precedent. When we've got, it's not the department that is responding to this, it is an individual in the department. And very often people in the departments, like everybody in society, carry their own prejudices, and we as a Muslim community have people in our own community who carry prejudices. We need to actually address that. We need to actually address it, and we need to be able to look at that, engage, and change the mindset. We would like to be able to see this resolved without having to go through a legal process where people sit down at the table, they have a conversation, they understand what and where people have had failings, whatever they may be in terms of how they've addressed this, and come to a resolution that is long lasting and that actually stays firm, and that is something which is practicable, something which is logical, something which is incorporative and inclusive. To this end, from a Samnet perspective, and just by the way, this is not the first time this issue has been raised. Samnet's actually aware of an instance in northern KZN where a student was taken to the school toilets and given a razor and made to shave. Now, that's actually a more serious issue in some ways because it infringes on a right. It's not just a suspension. Again, it comes back to what is the position that the parent wishes to take. You can't deal with these issues without the involvement, the permission and the support and the willingness of the parent to deal with this. We don't want to create environments where the students, remember, these students have to go back to school at the next day. They've got to actually go back, and we've got to create environments where the student is welcome and seen equally, and they're not feeling uncomfortable going back there. These are our young people. We're talking about children the age of 15, 16, 17, 18. These are not adults who have been kind of been through this, who've got lots of life experience. They're forming their values. We don't want them to be under peer pressure. We want to be able to give them the support, but we've also got to recognize that we've got to give that support, and we've got to be able to do that from both sides, whether it's administrators or otherwise. Greater High School, and I went to their website, and the website has some very, very clear and specific, kind of statements that they make. And we released in our press statement the comment that, they're not living their own values. They say they want to develop a sense of religion, respect for other beliefs. Now, how do you develop a sense of religion and respect for other beliefs if your first thing to do is you say, a student who's growing a beard because of his belief system should not be growing his beard? Where is the respect in that? And this is not, yes, part of the policies is that it's not about having a designer beard. It's not about going out there and doing something for fashion. At the same time, it's got to be a beard that is well kept, that is well presented. The student is not there to be doing this in a sense where he's kind of abusing the right as well. The rights come with responsibilities. And we argue that for all other elements, whether it's freedom of speech, etc., the rights come with responsibilities. You should have the right, or you have the right, to grow your beard and to practice your faith, as a student. And therefore, that right comes with the responsibility as well. But similarly, they want to create a self-confident and well-balanced person. Again, this is quotes from the school's website. This is about giving that student the confidence to stand up and say, I am a Muslim. This is my faith. This is what my faith requires. And this is what I actually want to be able to, how I express my faith is through growing a beard. They talk about, a framework of Christian value system. Well, Christian value systems incorporates tolerance. It incorporates the ability to recognize all other faiths. It incorporates the right of other people. It incorporates people to practice their Christian values as well. They want a positive self-value in each child. This is positive self-value. Now, we can't be telling students that you can't behave in a certain way and express yourself respecting the individuality and diversity. So as in their words, you can't say we want to respect individuality and diversity. And then at the first point of facing diversity, you say policy, and we don't want to deal with difference. You have to deal with diversity in different ways. And that over there is, I think, what we need to start with. There are other issues that we need to actually address. Can a public school profess that it is working to a Christian ethos in this day and age when it has to actually accommodate a very, very varied school body, when it is not there isn't a state enforced religion like there was 138 years ago, and that the school program, dynamic is changing. We need to actually express that. Again, they say, notwithstanding the Christian ethos of our school, provision will be made for each child to develop freely his or her own spiritual values. How is this? If we want to go back to policy, you have to drive your policies and your procedures and your practices based on your values. If not, your values are either your values you're not believing in, and those are empty, or your policies are actually not aligned with your values. And let us start with that. And that is a conversation that I think we need to start with. And once we have and we have addressed those issues, it then becomes very clear, I think, to all the role players, except those who already have a prejudice, who already have a preconceived ideas, then those people are the ones we need to actually address in a different manner. But I think that level heads, common sense would come in and say, you can't be professing a certain belief system and behaving and enforcing rules that are contradictory to that.
Well, Mohammed, I think what you're saying is very, very important. It's absolutely critical. At times we say it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And in responding, using the school's very own value system that they are promoting, and in this way, to common sense hopefully will prevail. Getting all worked up and raising your arms and making a major issue. Yeah, you have it, and really, it's an argument that can be presented to the school if approached correctly.
I think we don't want to go out and say this is not a major issue. In fact, it is a major issue. This month is actually, we've got Heritage Month. We want to be able to have, we've had schools that will, during the Heritage Day period, say, come and express your heritage, whether it is dress in your traditional clothing, dress in your cultural clothing, express your faith, express. Now, how can you have in a primary school, I live across the road from a primary school, how can you have students being told in a primary school, come to school and express what is different about you? Show us what is your individuality. Show us what you believe in, where you take your morals from. This student is taking his morals from his belief. The same as a Christian student who's at that school, in alignment with the Christian ethos. So if the student takes his moral values, if he takes all of that from Islam, if he takes it from his belief, he is somebody who has to choose between right and wrong. And we see that through society, that yes, there will be people of all faiths who get it, who behave inappropriately. But here is a student who is a well-behaved student. He hasn't infringed other rules. He is somebody who is, the school should actually be putting forward and saying, look, we accept the diversity, we acknowledge it. Let us actually put forward this so that it shows whatever your faith is, you are an equal citizen, you are an equal student, you are an equal in society. And we need to set this example for our youth. The school is setting a terrible example because what it is doing is it's taking a classroom and it's dividing it. It's creating a them and us, approach, rather than one which says this is actually something which we as a school body. I would love to be able to engage with other youth at the school. There will be, and we've seen this in other places. There have been incidents of racism in school. And I think that a large number of our youth, one, don't know how to deal with it. Secondly, don't want to actually address it because it will create conflict with their peers. Thirdly, very often I think it does probably get brushed aside. We know that teachers, have had instances where teachers have expressed racist issues as well. Teachers get abused by racism as well, in the classroom. So we have to deal with all of these things on an ongoing basis. And when we have these things that are happening in our schools, we need to be able to, as the parents, as the legislators, as the administrators, as the governing bodies, as the school leadership, and as the teachers and the educators, all come together and recognize that the school and the classroom is not what it was 138 years ago or even 30 years ago. And that over there involves and includes that every student must be able to proudly walk into school with their uniform, with their school badges, and they must actually feel that they want to be part of the school. We had one comment a number of years ago when we were dealing with a different issue, when a parent and a governing board member said, we let you into our school, and now you want to force these things on us. And we said, hold on, this is not our school. This is a state school. This is a public asset. The reason that you see it as our school is because it excluded people like you, Inayat, and myself, where we may have lived down the road, but we weren't able to attend the school. So now that we have our children are coming there, it is their school. It is not the parents' school. It's not the governing body's school. It's the student's school. And if we create that mindset, and people put forward that mindset and say that the school belongs to the governing body, then the governing body has to recheck what it is actually standing for. The school belongs to the students, and in 30 years' time, that parent or that student now is going to be a parent, and he's going to be able, and he should be proud enough to say, this is my school. This is where I want to actually contribute to the growth. It shouldn't be that you were there as a privilege. We are there and our students are there. It is their right to be so at a school. It is their right to be educated equally, fairly, without any prejudice, and to be included, not just accommodated. So the policy should be inclusive, not accommodative. And there is a difference. And sometimes I think we, especially over the last 30 years in certain areas, the approach has been to accommodate diversity, and we shouldn't be looking now to address those issues. No, there's books that are written on this. Professor Khadija Malloy, I think, contributed to one which spoke about the inclusivity in the classroom, which speaks about the fact that we changed policy, we changed administration, we changed a lot of things, but people didn't really empower and properly deal with how does a teacher deal with diversity in the classroom. How do they deal with that when especially a lot of us have and still live in very, very isolated environments? The school is still, and it comes from a history of a monoculture, a mono religion, a mono ethnicity, a mono faith. When you now have this multitude of diversity that is coming in there, it needs to be dealt with. And there are programs, there are actually people who are putting out programs to address this with not just the student body, but with the teacher body. And there is conflict. We've seen this coming back in feedback where there are parents and teachers and administrators who have been given these perspectives through their entire life. And only when they actually are faced with this reality do they come to the point where they actually see things differently. We need to change. We talk about changing hearts and minds. That's where the reality starts. We talk about things like how we and the Muslim community also needs to address some of these things. One of the things is, for example, the National Mosque Open Day program that we at Samnet have been putting forward to be able to bring in the parents of these students, because the students who have these ideas are normally inculcated with some of these views based on the preconceived ideas they're given at home. So we need to bring those parents and say, look, this is who we are. This is what is the values of the child sitting next to you. This is how he believes. This is how he prays. And until we actually be able to bring ourselves and bring people together, we will not change minds. And until we can't change the minds. Nothing is going to change. All we're going to have is an adversarial situation, and one which is going to be one where people are going to respond because the law told them to do so, not because they actually believe that this is now the correct thing to do. We need to actually be able to address. So whether it is opening up, the opportunity for people to come in and say, look, we come in and see and engage with us, like we have during, in KZN, we had it during the flooding, we've had it during the unrest, where we've seen, the masjids becoming the center of the community, and there are definite benefits thereafter. Those parents who engage with students, whose students are, whose children are engaging with other Muslim students, they have a different perspective from those who build up barriers. And we need to actually open up even our homes. We need to be able to make sure that our children are engaging with the diversity out there, with their friends beyond just the classroom, so that they can see and they can understand that this is a belief system that has a long history, that the beard is, in some ways, one of the other things that has come up is that the beard, when you look at it from a Christian historical basis, there is, huge tons of references about Ibrahim alayhi salam in terms of Abraham or Ismail alayhi salam and Yaqub
Isa
alayhi
alayhi
salam,
salam.
Musa alayhi salam, all of them, it talks about their beards. Now you
Exactly.
talk about a Christian ethos, you talk about setting role models. If you're going to use Ibrahim and Abraham as, and I say this for a non-Muslim audience, if they are going to use Abraham as the father of our monotheistic religions, the one commonality we have, what do the Christian scriptures talk about? They talk about his beard. They talk about the beard of Moses. Why is it that it is such it is being deemed a Christian issue, which is what was actually portrayed in the Northern KZN, incident, where some of the school leaders came in and said, "Oh, it's Christian values." Christian values have nothing to do with the beard. It doesn't have
Exactly.
anything. I mean,
Yes.
there's nothing to do to object to the beard. Would be the better description of that. The Christian values does not mean that you must be clean shaven. That's actually a very, very modern perspective. It's something which comes, being clean shaven is a rather modern
Mm.
Eurocentric kind of view. I mean, there are other issues that we do need to talk about. Some of
Well,
the
Mohammed,
Eurocentric elements.
yeah, I think
But
obviously,
coming back,
Mohammed, you've opened up, so much that we need to actually talk to, and obviously, this is something that we definitely will be following up. But I think, I'd like to actually hold you and possibly a panel as well on a more detailed discussion, because I think there's just so much more we actually need to unpack, and unfortunately, time has actually run out. And the ideal forum would be the one that I host on a Wednesday night, where we have a detailed panel discussion. And inshallah, looking at what you've said, and it's not only got to do with the beard issue, but there are many, many other issues that you have raised. And hopefully, we can put a panel up together and have a more detailed discussion going forward,
inshallah.
inshallah.
Looking forward
Okay.
to it, and really, really appreciate it. And thank you to Islam Media for having us and getting this message out there. We need to be able to resolve this as quickly and effectively for the student firstly. It
Okay,
mustn't
no
affect his
problem.
education.
Jazakallah so much to you, and all the best to you. Please take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
Mohammed Kharwa joining us, and wow, there's been a lot. There's a lot of food for thought in what Mohammed Kharwa has had to say, and that is the reason why I say I don't think we have done justice to this discussion. We addressed an immediate problem, but there are many, many other issues that we would like to obviously take a look at on a more detailed discussion, a panel discussion on this particular matter. The time is just gone 8:40, 9:45. We come back. We'll be joined by Levi Indo, taking a look at the ANC, looking at doing an audit on their membership before making the announcement as far as their nominations go for the electoral conference that is due to take place on the 16th of December.